My life shattered on a rainy October afternoon just 3 months into my pregnancy. The love of my life, my husband Dylan, was gone in an instant, taken by a tragic accident at the warehouse where he worked. I was left standing in the ruins of our dreams, grappling with grief that arrived before I even had a chance to comprehend the loss. But the storm didn't end there. Instead of offering comfort, his family turned on me, blaming me for their own financial struggles and demanding that I pay for my brother-in-law's college tuition. I was heartbroken, but I knew I had to fight. I had a child to protect, and I couldn't let their demands suffocate me. If anyone tells you to endure unbearable burdens for the sake of family harmony, listen to my story. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. My name is Lena, and at 28 I found myself navigating a world turned upside down. I had been baking since I was 17, and by the time I was 23, I had established a small online bakery that brought me joy amidst the chaos of daily life. My marriage to Dylan had been built on love and shared responsibilities, but now I was left to juggle the weight of my dreams and the harsh realities of survival, running the household, paying bills, and preparing for a child who would never know her father. Dylan worked tirelessly as a loader at a warehouse on the outskirts of Milwaukee. His night shifts were physically demanding, yet he never complained. He often said he was doing it for his family, worried that his parents couldn't afford their medications or that his sister wouldn't manage to pay her tuition. Despite my protests that his sister was old enough to fend for herself, he always reassured me, "Let's wait a little longer. She hasn't graduated yet. She needs us." It was this unwavering sense of duty that made him the strongest in his family, but it also meant he bore the burdens of everyone around him. His parents, having retired early due to health issues, relied on government assistance and a modest pension. The house we lived in was under their name, but the financial responsibilities, utilities, groceries, and his sister's education, mostly fell to us. When I launched my home bakery, Dylan was my biggest supporter, waking up early to help me check orders and prepare ingredients. He would often whisper encouragements, reminding me to mix the baking powder or set the timer, his gentle presence a soothing balm in my hectic world. I believed that as long as I had him, our struggles would be worth it. Everything changed when I discovered I was pregnant, a moment that should have brought us joy. Instead, it was overshadowed by a darkness that would soon consume our lives. We had planned to share the news with our families that weekend, but fate had other plans. In the blink of an eye, Dylan was taken from me, leaving behind an unfillable void. The weight of his absence pressed down on me like a suffocating shroud, and as I stood in our kitchen, surrounded by the scent of baking and memories of laughter, I couldn't help but feel the world closing in around me. As I faced the unimaginable, I knew I had to gather my strength, not just for myself, but for the child growing inside me. The fight was only beginning, and I was determined to reclaim my life, no matter the cost. On days when I was too tired and overslept, he'd wake up in my place, light the stove, weigh out the ingredients, then lean in and whisper, "Sweetheart, I put the baking powder on the shelf. You need to mix it." Dylan never went to college and never asked for anything for himself. Every time he got paid, he'd send a portion straight to his parents and give me the rest to manage. He quietly saved up on his own some months just to buy his sister a new laptop, because the old one was too slow for her design projects. I never complained because I loved the way he lived, responsible, patient, and always putting his family first. I used to believe that as long as I had him, all the struggles would be worth it. Our life felt even more complete a year ago when I found out I was pregnant, the baby we had both longed for since we married. We didn't scream with joy, and we didn't rush to tell the world. Dylan just held me tightly in the kitchen, right next to a tray of half-baked cookies, and whispered, "Our baby, it's real." That night, he fixed up an old chair in the home office, saying it could be used as a diaper-changing spot later on. Every night after that, he'd rest his hand gently on my belly before we fell asleep. He wouldn't say much, just stayed quiet, like he was trying to hear something growing from within. I had never seen him so tender. I also started rewriting my business plan, figuring out how to care for a baby and keep my bakery running. Dylan told me not to worry, he'd pick up extra shifts. "I can be tired," he said, "but you're not allowed to fall." We had planned to share the good news with the whole family over the weekend when everyone would be together, but we never got the chance. Because the very next day he was gone forever from me and our baby. I lost my husband on a cold, rainy afternoon in October. I was in the kitchen that day, baking for the next day's orders. The oven was warm, the flames glowing red, and the scent of butter and cinnamon filled the room. Everything felt normal until the phone rang. It was an unknown number. I picked up, and before I could say a word, the voice on the other end asked, "Are you Dylan's wife?" I froze, my heart pounded, my throat went dry. I asked, my voice trembling, "What happened? Is he okay?" The man on the line replied slowly, "There was an accident at the warehouse. A heavy pallet fell from above. We did everything we could. I'm very sorry." I didn't hear anything after that. It was like my ears went numb. My whole body turned cold, even though the oven was still warm behind me. I screamed. I don't remember how I left the house. I remember running straight into the street, flagging down a taxi in the pouring rain. I told the driver, "To the hospital, please, as fast as you can." When I got there, I rushed into the emergency room and asked for my husband. They directed me to a small room, bright, cold, and unbearably sterile, and then I saw him. Dylan was lying there motionless, no sound from any machines, no response at all, just a silent body still on a hospital bed. I called his name. Over and over until my voice was hoarse. I shook his shoulder, I cried, but he didn't open his eyes. I don't know when I passed out. All I remember is that when I came to, something inside me had shattered completely. The night after the funeral, when all the relatives had gone home, the house became eerily quiet, so quiet I could hear the ticking of the wall clock in the living room. My mother-in-law sat silently in a corner of the sofa, staring into nothing. My father-in-law smoked wordlessly out on the porch. And my sister-in-law, she shut her bedroom door when the memorial ended. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I felt like the whole house, and maybe the entire world, had suddenly become too big for someone trying to hold on to the one small piece of her husband that was still left. Afterward, I rushed into the bathroom, shut the door, turned the water on low, and sat on the cold tile floor. I placed my hand on my belly. My baby, or more accurately, the only part of him still with me, was there, quiet, just like everything around me. I sat like that for hours until the hot water tank finally ran dry. The only thought in my mind was, tomorrow I need to get up early, there's a batch of pastries due at the shop by 7 a.m. The following day I still got up at 5, I still made breakfast, I still brewed coffee for the family, still carefully set a cup of warm milk on the table as if he were still there. The house was the same, quiet, tidy, full of things he used to touch. But I was different. I had become someone alone, someone hollow, just like the way he left me suddenly, without warning, leaving behind a space that nothing could ever fill. And I didn't know then that this was just the calm before the storm. 1 month after Dylan's funeral, everything in the house ran precisely as if he were alive. Everyone stuck to their old routines. My mother-in-law still sat on the sofa watching TV late into the night. My father-in-law still smoked out on the porch. His sister Tina still slept in until noon, went to school, and then locked herself in her room for the rest of the evening. No one asked if I needed anything. No one brought up money. Not a single, "Are you doing okay?" Not a single, "How should we split the bills from now on?" Maybe to them I seemed fine. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't complain. I still woke up early to bake. I still washed the dishes. Still handed over money for the household at the start of every month. But they didn't see me counting every dollar to pay the electric bill. They didn't know I once had to text my best friend to borrow $200 because orders were slow and we had run out of rice at home. I only handled groceries and a few minor expenses when Dylan was alive. But now everything, electricity, water, vitamins for my mother-in-law, food for the aging cat, was suddenly on me. I tried to keep things under control. But there was one thing I couldn't continue: the monthly allowance for Tina. I wrestled with it for a long time. I knew if Dylan were still here, he wouldn't let his sister go without, but he wasn't here anymore. It was just me alone with a growing belly and bills that wouldn't stop piling up. Tina was 22. I figured that even if she couldn't fully support herself, she could get a weekend job or work a few shifts at the campus library. I didn't say it harshly, I just spoke the truth. But in this house, the truth was something no one wanted to hear. I had no idea that a reasonable suggestion would make me the thorn in everyone's side. And from that moment on, everything started slipping out of my hands in ways I never imagined. I waited until everyone was seated at the breakfast table the following day. That's when I decided to say it all. I stood up straight, resting one hand gently on my belly. "I have something to share. I'm pregnant for months now." My mother-in-law froze, then rushed over and tightly wrapped her arms around me. "Are you serious? Oh my God, my grandbaby." She was trembling, but it was a trembling from joy. Her eyes lit up with something other than grief for the first time in weeks. My father-in-law looked up from his newspaper, gave a single nod, and said in an even tone, "That's good. Dylan can rest easy now." I turned to look at Tina. She stared at me, suspicion clear in her eyes. "For months, so you knew all this time and didn't say anything?" I nodded. "Yes, but now I need to start preparing. It'll be just me taking care of both of us." I didn't let the room fall into silence for too long. I went on, my voice calm but steady. "That's why I want to let everyone know, starting next month, I won't be able to keep sending more money to Tina." The mood in the room shifted instantly. Tina dropped her spoon, eyes wide. "What, you mean cut it off completely?" I nodded, doing my best to stay composed. "I'm sorry, I can't afford it anymore. I hope you can look for a part-time job, maybe something on weekends or online. You're strong enough to stand on your own now." After I said that, Tina let out a sarcastic laugh and leaned back in her chair like she was watching some joke unfold. "So you announce you're pregnant and the first thing you do is cut me off? That was quick." Then she turned to her parents. "See, she pushes me out like I'm nothing when she gets a chance." Before Tina could go on, my father-in-law slammed his coffee cup on the table. His voice was firm. "If she can't afford it, then that's that. You're old enough to figure things out yourself." My mother-in-law hesitated, glancing between me and Tina. Then she added quietly, "Times are tough. Everyone has to make sacrifices. Tina, try to find a part-time job, okay?" Tina didn't respond. But I saw the anger burning in her eyes, and I knew this wasn't the end. I thought that morning's conversation would end in silence. But by afternoon, my mother-in-law called me to the living room while I was pulling a fresh batch of pastries from the oven. Tina was already there as I stepped in, legs crossed on the sofa, arms folded, her stare sharp as a knife. My mother-in-law sat beside her, tense, nervously fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. My father-in-law stood at the far end of the room, arms crossed like he'd been waiting for me all day. Before I could say a word he spoke, his voice low and firm. If you think you have the right to decide to cut off Tina's support, you'd better think again. I tried to stay calm, I didn't decide it on a whim. I explained my reason clearly. I'm pregnant and now the only one providing for everything. I hadn't even finished when Tina cut in. My brother worked for years and gave everything to you. He always thought of you first, every overtime shift, holiday bonus, and extra hour. And now he's gone and you're saying you can't afford it, so where's all his money gone? I looked her in the eyes, my voice steady and low. You think your brother made that much? You know how much of his paycheck went to rent, utilities, your parents' meds, your tuition before I saw a dime. And I was baking from dawn to midnight to cover the rest. You think I was sitting here hoarding cash? Tina let out a cold, mocking laugh. You sure play the hardworking wife well. But if you were that capable, how come you can't spare a few $100 for me each month? Doesn't quite add up, does it? Right then my father-in-law stepped forward, his voice like a hammer against the wall. If it's too much for you, you can move out. This house doesn't belong to you. I let you and Dylan stay here out of goodwill, not so you could come in and start stripping rights away from others. I stood still for a moment, then asked, needing to hear it to believe it. So you're saying if I don't keep sending money to Tina, I don't have the right to stay here? That's exactly what I'm saying, he replied hesitantly. You have no ties to this family except that child you're carrying. If you're unwilling to carry your husband's responsibilities, you have no reason to live in this house. I turned to my mother-in-law. She looked up at me, eyes brimming with tears. Then she turned to her husband, her voice shaking, almost pleading. She's pregnant, you can't just throw her out. But he didn't budge. She's pregnant, that's exactly why I won't let her drag this whole house down. Everyone has to do their part. I looked at my mother-in-law, hoping she'd stand up, put a hand on my shoulder, say something, anything. But she just sat there, eyes fixed on the floor, no nod, no shake of the head, just silence, colder than any refusal. I straightened my back, placing a hand gently on my belly. Then I'll make a different choice. I can't live in a house where kindness comes with conditions. And I turned and walked away, my footsteps heavier than ever. I didn't cry, I had no tears left. All I knew for sure was this: I didn't belong here. And maybe I never indeed did. The following day, the house felt eerily cold. As I stepped down the stairs, I saw my father-in-law standing in the living room, his face tight like a stretched wire. My mother-in-law sat beside him, her hands trembling as she held an open wooden box. Tina stood nearby, arms crossed, a smug look on her face like she'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. The jade bracelet set gone without a trace, my father-in-law said through clenched teeth. 30th anniversary jewelry locked away in her drawer, now it's all missing. His words were heavy with accusation, aimed squarely at me. I froze, stunned. I didn't know anything about this. I never. Before I could finish, Tina cut in, her voice icy. You were the last one in that room, she said flatly. Mom asked you to grab her medicine from the drawer 2 days ago. No one else has been in there since. So tell us, if it wasn't you, then who? I turned to my mother-in-law, hoping she would speak up for me. She slightly nodded when Tina mentioned the medicine, but didn't look at me. She didn't say a word. I took a deep breath, feeling my chest tighten. All I took was her headache pills. I didn't touch anything else. My father-in-law snapped, then let's make this simple. Lena, go upstairs, bring down your bags, your backpack, everything. If you've nothing to hide, you've nothing to worry about. I looked him in the eye, my voice calm but firm. I have the right to say no. These are my personal belongings. In America, no one can go through someone's things without a valid reason. I paused, then spoke again, deliberately, each word cutting through the room. But if that's what you all want, I'll agree. Not because I'm afraid, but because I want you to see that I respect this house more than it respects me. Tina said nothing. She just curled her lips into a quiet, satisfied smile. I turned and headed upstairs, fists clenched tight. And in that moment, I couldn't hear anything except the pounding of my own heart. 20 minutes later, 3 bags and a small suitcase were laid open in the middle of the living room. Every piece of my belongings was pulled out and tossed around. Underwear, socks, bath towels, lipstick, pads, grocery receipts, my prenatal checkup book, all scattered across the floor like a mess of dignity trampled underfoot. I stood there, silent. My mother-in-law still said nothing. Tina sifted through every wallet pocket and flipped every Ziploc bag like searching for golden evidence. But there was nothing, not a note, not a stone, not a single piece of jewelry. Finally, my father-in-law turned to Tina. Find anything? Tina bit her lip, but her eyes still held suspicion. Maybe she already sold it. At that, I laughed dry and hollow, burning in my throat, of course. When you can't find anything, move on to assumptions. No one replied, not my father-in-law, not my mother-in-law. The room fell into heavy silence. I knelt down and slowly began picking up my things one by one. I didn't rush. I didn't say another word, but inside me something snapped. Not because I was accused, but because I finally realized in this house I was no longer a person. I was just a suspect awaiting proof. I spent the whole afternoon in my room, folding my things individually. No one knocked. No one asked if I was okay. I had become a shadow in this house, an uninvited guest treated like a thief just waiting to be tossed out like a stain. At that moment, all I wished for was Dylan to be beside me, to hold me tight. I didn't turn the lights on. I wanted to remember this feeling. The moment I realized no one was on my side anymore. Just as I carried the first box to the front door that evening, my father-in-law blocked the way. His expression was ice cold, like he was speaking to a stranger. "You're planning to leave without saying a word?" I kept my composure. "I figured everyone's been waiting for me to go." He crossed his arms. "You can leave, but the matter of the jade bracelet isn't over." I looked him straight in the eye. "I didn't take anything," he snorted. "Words don't mean much without proof, and you've got none." Just as the tension between us grew, Tina stepped out of the kitchen, soda can in hand, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Maybe she hid it in that box or pawned it already and stashed the cash somewhere." I turned to my mother-in-law, the only one I still had a sliver of hope for. "Mom, do you think I could do something like that?" She didn't answer. She just lowered her gaze. And that silence said more than any accusation ever could. I tightened my grip on the box, feeling the tears pressing at the edge of my eyes, but I wouldn't let them fall. I've lived here for almost 3 years. I've never done a single wrong to this family. I sent money every month, cooked every meal, prepared every dose of medicine, and changed every light bulb. And now you're willing to tear through my things, my underwear, my socks, just because of one person's word. Tina gave a cold smile. "You were here because of my brother. He's gone now, so what are you still doing here? Especially when it's obvious you've got something to hide." I looked at her, then turned to my father-in-law. "If you all think that, then okay. Tomorrow I'll go to the police. I'll file a theft report, request fingerprint checks, and have them pull footage from local pawn shops. Whoever did this, it'll come out. And whoever made this up, that'll come out too." The room went still. My father-in-law growled. "You threatening this family?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm protecting my name, because in this house that seems to be the only thing I have left." I turned and walked upstairs. The silence that followed wasn't just silence anymore, it was something cracked wide open, and I knew from this moment on I had nothing left to lose. The following day I left the house early. I didn't say where I was going and didn't need anyone to know. There was only one destination in my mind, the police station. But I didn't expect my phone to ring just as I turned the corner at the end of our street. It was my mother-in-law. She spoke briefly. "Come home right now," then she hung up. Her voice was strange, not cold, not soft, just distant. I turned the car around, half out of curiosity, half holding on to the faintest hope that maybe, just maybe, she had seen something I couldn't. When I walked into the house, Tina wasn't there. Neither was my father-in-law. Only my mother-in-law sat in the living room, holding a crumpled sheet of paper. Her face looking like it had just weathered a storm. Before I could ask anything, she handed the paper to me. I took it, my eyes scanning over the lines. It was a sales receipt from a local jewelry store. And under the seller's name it read clearly, Christina Weller. I looked up, my heart pounding. "Where did you find this?" she sighed, her thin hand brushing across her forehead. "When I was sorting through some old bills in Tina's drawer, I found it tucked between a stack of flyers. She probably thought no one would notice." I didn't say anything. Not because I was shocked, but because deep down I already knew. I just never expected that she would be the first to believe me. She went on, her voice thick with guilt. "I couldn't defend you that day. I was scared, I was weak. But now I know I was wrong." Still, I didn't speak. I just clenched the receipt in my hand. "Her father doesn't know yet, and Tina's not home. I want you to decide. Whatever you choose to do, I won't stop you." I looked at her. This woman who had stood on the edge between both sides for weeks was now reaching out to me. Maybe it was late, but sometimes late is still better than never. I nodded. "I know what I have to do." I had the proof. I had a choice. And this time I was the one holding the power. That evening everyone was present. My father-in-law had just returned from a council meeting. Tina, fresh out of the shower with damp hair and dragging her slippers across the floor, walked over to the dining table, her face blank. My mother-in-law told me to sit. She poured the juice into 4 glasses, then spoke up. "I have something I need the whole family to hear." Everyone turned to look at her. She placed a single sheet of paper in the center of the table. It had been flattened neatly. Under the warm yellow light, one name stood out in bold. Christina Weller sold a gemstone bracelet set worth $2,400. No one said a word. Tina froze. My father-in-law picked up the paper, his eyes locked on every line. Then, in a calm, measured voice, my mother-in-law said, "It was Tina who sold that bracelet. It belonged to me." At that, Tina shot up from her chair. I needed the money, okay? I was going to repurchase it. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone." My mother-in-law looked at her, her expression pained. "You didn't just take it. You lied. You accused your sister-in-law. You let her things be torn apart, let her be yelled at and doubted by everyone in this house." I stayed silent once, but not this time. Tina shouted, "This is all her fault. Ever since she showed up, you have changed. You started yelling at me, comparing me to her." I still said nothing. Tina pointed at me, voice trembling with anger. "Because of her, my allowance got cut. Because of her, my brother's dead." The air in the room shattered. My father-in-law looked up, voice sharp. "Tina, enough." Tina broke down, but it wasn't grief, it was fury. The meltdown of someone who'd never been told no. He worked himself to death for her. He was always worrying about her, the accident. He was trying to rush home because she kept texting him, but before she could say another word, "That's enough," my mother-in-law snapped, her voice cutting through the chaos. The house fell silent. She looked at Tina for the first time with absolute authority. "You made your choice, you live with it. You're not the 16-year-old I used to protect anymore." And Lena, she didn't kill anyone. The only person tearing this family apart is you. I stood up, not angry, not pitying, just tired. I looked at them and said quietly, I don't need anyone's belief anymore, but I won't let myself be stepped on in silence. I pulled a folded document from my pocket and laid it on the table. This is a copy of the police report I filled out this morning. But now if Mom wants to hold on to it, that's fine. I don't need to press charges anymore because I've taken back the only thing that matters, my dignity. At the mention of the police, Tina shrank back, tears streaming down her face. No longer angry, no longer defiant, just a lost little girl being pulled down from her imagined throne. I turned to my mother-in-law. Thank you for seeking the truth, but I think it's time I leave this place. The following day, I woke as sunlight touched the edge of the curtains. No one knocked on my door, no scent of coffee rising from the kitchen. The house was tranquil, like it was holding its breath after a storm. I didn't rush to pack. Each item I placed into my bag was a piece of the life I'd lived here. A few worn outfits, my notebook full of bakery orders, and the ultrasound print with the first name I'd ever thought of for my daughter. I folded everything carefully as if saying goodbye to an old version of myself. My mother-in-law was already there when I came downstairs. Arms folded, eyes red but dry. You've made up your mind, she said softly. Where will you go? I nodded. Anywhere, as long as it's not here. She tried to smile, though her lips trembled. I know I realized too late, but thank you for still giving me a chance to see myself. I didn't blame her. I didn't hug her. I just said one thing. I hope you remember this feeling. If my daughter asks why this place was never her grandparents' home one day, my father-in-law wasn't there. Tina wasn't either, and I didn't hope to see them again. I wheeled my suitcase to the car, step by step, never looking back. Each step was a quiet farewell, not to people but to expectations, effort, and the illusion that family always means protection. Just before closing the car door, I looked back at the house one last time. The house where I once imagined raising my child, where I buried my grief for my husband, where I cried into the night from exhaustion and no one ever asked if I was okay. I took nothing that wasn't mine, and the baby growing inside me was one of those things. I started the engine. Before I drove off that street, I sent one final message to the family group chat I had once been forced into. I will raise my child with two hands, not with anyone's pity. And if one day she asks why we are no longer a family, I'll tell her everything. No less, no more. And then I left. I rented a small apartment on the outskirts of town, about a 30-minute drive from the old house. Not far enough to completely cut ties with the past, but far enough that I no longer had to look back. That first afternoon, I sat in the middle of an empty room, my back against the wall, my hand resting on my belly. The baby kicked gently to remind me I still had a reason to keep going. I started over one step at a time. I reopened the online bakery I'd shut down after the funeral. Old customers trickled back slowly but consistently. A former classmate from my baking course reached out with a collaboration offer. I said yes, not for the money, but because I needed to prove to myself that I still could, not to them. To me, every morning I woke before the sun, mixed dough, baked pastries, packed orders. I no longer cooked for people who never said thank you, no longer washed dishes to the sound of blame. Every cup of coffee I brewed at 6 a.m. was for myself. And every pastry I placed into a box, I knew I was slowly kneading a new future into shape. Some nights I dreamt of my husband. Dylan was always sitting at the kitchen table, smiling as he watched me bake. He didn't say anything. He stayed quiet, his eyes as gentle as we met the first day. I don't know if it was memory or my mind trying to soothe itself, but I always woke up feeling at peace. I'm not angry anymore. I'm not chasing justice. I have the truth. I walked away, and I'm still standing. At the end of each day when I place my hand on my belly, I often whisper just one thing. You will grow up in a world where your mother never bowed her head, I promise. I went into labor on a chilly early winter morning. The first contraction came while I was wiping down the kitchen counter, just a gentle tightening in my belly, and then it faded. I thought I had a few more hours. But 10 minutes later, the pain came in crashing waves, pounding like surf against a stone. I didn't scream. I gripped the counter's edge, breathed deeply, and tried to stay calm while my mind scrambled to remember where I'd left my phone to call 911. Then came a knock at the door. Mrs. Henderson, my downstairs neighbor, the one who always brought cookies and checked on me in the afternoons. One glance and she knew. Oh my God, sweetheart, those contractions are hitting hard. Have you called an ambulance? I shook my head. She didn't wait for another word. Sit down, don't say anything. I'm calling right now. 10 minutes later, the ambulance arrived. Mrs. Henderson followed me to the hospital doors, pressing a small bag into my hand. A water bottle, a few protein bars, and a light green knitted baby blanket, edge slightly worn. My daughter clung to that blanket for the whole first year, she said, her hand warm on my shoulder. Consider it a little good luck. I gave birth at 5:12 the following day. My daughter, golden curls, soft gray-blue eyes. She looked so much like him it took my breath away, not from the pain, but because in that moment I realized a part of him was still here in this world, in the tiny body resting quietly in my arms. When the nurse took my daughter for her checkup, I was left alone to rest for a few hours. No one came. I wasn't expecting anyone to, but around noon there was a knock at the hospital room door. I looked up. It was my mother-in-law. She stood there in a heavy coat holding a small cloth bag, no makeup, no fuss, just herself, and eyes tinged red for a reason I didn't need to ask. She didn't ask to come in. I didn't say she could. But she stepped forward anyway, gently placing the bag on the table beside my bed. I know you don't need anyone else, she said, voice so soft I almost missed it. But there's something I thought you should have. She pulled out a small silver bracelet from the bag tarnished with time. Engraved on it were 3 letters, Dylan's initials. He wore this until he was 6, she said with a quiet laugh, cried like crazy when he dropped it in the toilet. We fished it out, cleaned it up, kept it, then forgot all about it. Last week I found it while cleaning the garage. And I thought of the baby. I held the bracelet. It was light as air, but my hand trembled as I gripped it. Then I said, I haven't chosen a name for her yet. I murmured, my voice still hoarse from a long night. But I know one thing. She'll grow up knowing her father was a sensitive little boy who wore a silver bracelet and loved his mother very much. Just then the nurse brought my daughter back into the room. My mother-in-law sat down beside me. She didn't reach for my hand, didn't look directly at the baby as if she wasn't quite ready yet. But when she stood to leave, she said quietly, if you ever need anything, not help, just someone to hold her so you can get some sleep, call me. I nodded, no promises, but I didn't shut the door either. She stepped out of the room. I turned back to my daughter, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. I tightened my grip around the silver bracelet, then gently pulled the soft green blanket, Mrs. Henderson's blanket, up over her chest. And for the first time, I thought maybe the past it still has something gentle to offer. A year after I walked away from that old house, I've never returned. No family dinners, no holiday phone calls, not even a glance at that familiar wooden gate, and strangely, I don't feel like I'm missing anything. My daughter has a few tiny teeth now. She loves biting into towels, playing with her silver bracelet, and giggling whenever I turn on music while baking. Every day with her is a day I'm truly living, not just surviving. My mother-in-law calls once in a while. She says hi to the baby on video. She doesn't say much. She doesn't dig into the past. I let her call when she needs to, and I hang up when I've had enough. I don't try to erase what happened. I've just chosen not to live in it anymore. I haven't forgiven. But I also haven't chained myself to anger, because at the end of the day, a child needs a mother who knows how to let go more than one who knows how to get revenge. I still live in the same little apartment. I still wake up early to bake. Still, I peek into my daughter's room each morning and adjust the pale green blanket Mrs. Henderson once gave us, now worn soft like a memory. I've never seen myself as strong, I just never permitted myself to fall. And if one day my daughter grows up and asks, Mom, how did you get through it? I won't tell her the details. I'll say I didn't go back, but I didn't carry hatred with me either, because forgiveness isn't for them. It's so you can keep living a little lighter, a little freer for the rest of your life. And what about you? If it were you, would you be willing to walk away from the place once called family to protect yourself and the child you haven't even met yet? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're in the middle of your journey, you're not alone. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this story. Thank you, and see you in the next one.